Hi guys, so welcome to Physiology. We're going to start with chapter 1. When we go through PowerPoint presentations, make sure you have your outline there. I'll be referencing the outline, and that way we can follow along with the outline and look at pictures as we go that are in your textbook. All right, so human physiology is the scientific study of the functions of your organs. So your organs function in running chemical reactions, so we have to look at chemistry and the physics of your molecules, and then each tissue and each organ are going to work together to support basically life, right? Your entire organism. So your body is always trying to maintain homeostasis. So you're trying to maintain a stable internal environment because the outside world is always in change. It's in flux. Your body's doing different things at different times of the day. You're putting different things inside your body. And so your cells, your organs, your tissues are all trying to maintain sort of a homeostatic, sort of stable internal environment. So your chemical reactions and your body's functions can occur unimpeded and, at a normal, regular level. So the first thing in your outline is looking at this is just functions are integrated, right? Parts of your body will work together. Proper functioning of one part depends on the other parts. And these are just some examples of how your body all work together, right? Your muscles work on oxygen, right? So oxygen is provided by your red blood cells with your cardiovascular system. Your red blood cells being manufactured in the bone marrow. So there's your skeletal system, right? So your muscular system, the cardiovascular system, and the skeletal system are intimately tied together. They rely on each other. Red blood cell synthesis requires erythropoietin, which is a hormone secreted by the kidneys. So there is our urinary system. Your oxygen is extracted from air breathed by the lungs. There's your respiratory system. And the lung expansion is controlled by the nervous system, right? Your breathing rate, how deeply you breathe, how often you breathe, that's controlled by the autonomic nervous system. And also, there's your cardiovascular system. So we can see that just to move your body, it depends on all the systems, these different systems working together. Things that maybe you don't think need to work together, but they do. So let's take a look at the organization of the body. So the cells are the smallest living unit. The cell is capable of carrying on all of life's characteristics. And life's characteristics you covered in a prerequisite class. Things such as being able to reproduce, to use energy, to metabolize substances, I guess that's energy, have a higher order, to evolve, et cetera, et cetera. So the smallest unit of life. And this is just a nice slide to illustrate how cells are different from one another. Your neurons look a certain way. They have long processes. Your epithelial cells have a function to line the surfaces of your body. They're going to be different in appearance and function. Muscle cells, even though muscle cells all contract, they have different appearances based on their specific organ. Your skeletal muscles are the muscles that are voluntary, that move your body. The smooth muscle are in your organs that contract involuntarily. And your cardiac muscles are only in the heart, right? And they contract your entire life. So the tissues you see here, the blood, bone, and fibroblasts, these are all part of your connective tissue cells. Now, connective tissue is a very diverse tissue that you covered in anatomy. And so what you have listed here is that we have these 4 basic tissue types, and therefore 4 basic cell types. So neurons, muscle cells, epithelial cells, and connective tissue cells. What makes them unique is their function, right? So the nervous tissue or the neurons are all able to create an impulse. The epithelial tissues are a lining of the body. And so they're going to be very involved in secretion of substances, absorption of substances, okay? And then your muscles, these are contractile tissues or contractile cells. And then connective tissue is varied, but connective tissue is a binding tissue, and it holds organs together, it holds cells together, and the function is varied based on the type of connective tissue. So go through the textbook and just review the different tissue types and cell types. Glands, let's just talk real quick about glands. Glands are created from epithelial tissue, and glands are going to have a duct, right? So the duct is just a space where the cells that secrete the substance, called secretory cells, they're going to secrete their substances into the duct, and then the duct will then allow these substances to come into a space. This first example is called an exocrine gland. And an exocrine gland is going to be a gland that secretes substances into a duct, and then from that duct into another cavity, such as your stomach or into your small intestine, or this duct can lead outside the body. So the external environment can be the lumen of an organ, or it can be outside the body. And that's the definition of an exocrine gland. Endocrine glands are another type of gland, and they are the epithelial cells that create the gland are going to be surrounded by lots of blood vessels. These blood vessels will pick up the secretions from those glands and circulate around your body in the bloodstream. Endocrine glands are synonymous with your hormone system. So the endocrine system is composed of endocrine glands. These glands all secrete substances that are categorized as hormones into the bloodstream. So it's synonymous to think the endocrine glands are secreting into the bloodstream with the endocrine system and hormones. All right. So remember that epithelial cells create glands, and we're still on number 2, letter C, epithelial cells and glands. Epithelial cells also create membranes, and membranes are we're going to look at membranes and how they separate the outside and inside of our body. All right, so let's answer this question, which is the following is not a muscle type. When you see a question like this, you can always pause the video, think about it, but I will tell you the answer. All right, so smooth, cardiac, and skeletal are muscle types, but rough is not a muscle type. Epithelium consists of a continuous sheet-like layer of epithelial cells in combination with a thin underlying layer of non-cellular material called. This is a review from anatomy. The answer is C, the basement membrane. This is also a review. Which cells are classified as the same major type of tissue as bone cells and fat cells? The answer is A, blood, because bone and fat are both connective tissues. Looking at your list, the only connective tissue here is blood. All right, so looking at this table in your textbook, you need to be able to have this in your mind. So you should know the different systems of the body, the organs and tissues in those systems, and then the function of those systems. All right, so let's take a look at the overall body plan. So in terms of your outline, letter C and letter D, that's basically covered by that table, and I'm not going to go over this because this is your anatomy class had covered this material. So let's look at figure 1.4. This is a simplified view of your body, and we are looking at epithelial cells. So you can see that what is separating the outside and the inside of our body is epithelial cells. Here's our external environment on the outside of our little square. So imagine, right, your skin is that barrier from the outside to the inside of your body. This is an epithelial cell layer. And then there's your mucous membranes. That is a barrier to the outside world. Your mucous membranes, remember, are protective because the mucus does trap particulates and microbes, and it prevents them from entering deeper into the cells, into your body. But it's more permeable, and mucous membranes are found everywhere in the body that's exposed to the outside world, but not skin. So this would include your respiratory system, it would include your digestive system, and parts of your urinary system. and reproductive system. So if we look at this sort of central opening that goes through, this is actually let's take a look at your GI tract, right? Your gastrointestinal tract is exposed to the outside world. So when you eat food, this is an outside external piece of food, right? A piece of a substance that goes right through your tract, and your entire gastrointestinal tract is lined by epithelium. So in comes nutrients, water, and inorganic ions, and then out are the unabsorbed materials. What else is exposed to the outside is going to be your respiratory system, right? So your air comes into the lungs, and what crosses over the epithelium is going to be controlled by those cells of the lungs. So your lungs, your respiratory system, is going to have a barrier of epithelial cells to the air. And then if we look down here at the bottom, we have your urinary system, right? So your kidneys are going to filter your bloodstream and then excrete the waste in urine. So we see that the epithelium really plays a role in separating your internal environment with the external environment. And the epithelium will change with different parts of your body. So if it has to be an absorbing kind of epithelium, so if you're going to absorb food from your digestive tract, the epithelium will have microvilli to increase the surface area for absorption. If it's diffusing gases, you want the diffusion to occur really quickly, the epithelium will be very, very thin squamous cells. So all throughout the body, we're going to have different kinds of epithelium controlling the movement of material. So let's look at the exchange, number 2. So exchange of materials through the blood to interstitial fluid surrounding the cells. So we need to get familiar with the word interstitial fluid. So interstitial means inside, between the cells. So the fluid that bathes your cells, the cells are sitting in, is called the interstitial fluid. And again, we just go through the lungs. We have diffusion of gases, inspiration and expiration. Inspiration is breathing in, expiration is breathing out. The gastrointestinal tract is responsible for absorption of nutrients. It's going to be secreting enzymes and different substances into the lumen of the digestive tract. And then excretion of wastes, right? So the word excretion means to get rid of wastes. The kidneys are going to filter. So they're going to have the bloodstream. The blood is going to be carrying all kinds of waste products that are absorbed and processed through the digestive tract. And so it's going to be filtered out into the tubules of the kidney. And then in the tubules of the kidney, there's going to be a lot of modification to that fluid. And some substances will be reabsorbed, which means it'll be moving back into the bloodstream. Some areas will secrete later on in the kidneys. But overall, right, we know our urinary system and the kidneys are responsible for filtering out our waste products and excreting them in urine. So we have filtration, we have reabsorption. So reabsorption is basically taking back what had been lost in the first place. So substances are filtered out initially at the filtration point, and perhaps we're losing too much. So glucose can be filtered out, vitamins can be filtered out, but those substances are going to get reabsorbed back into the bloodstream because we want those things. And there's going to be mechanisms to do that on the epithelial cells. Okay, so that's what reabsorption is. And then secretion and excretion, we talked about that. All right, so let's talk about a couple more terms here. So we have our bodily fluids and compartments. So we talked about the interstitial fluid surrounding our cells, okay? But there's also fluid inside of our cells. So that's called intracellular fluid, which is abbreviated ICF. So inside of our cells, inside the cytoplasm of our cells, we have this intracellular fluid, and that makeup, the chemical composition, is going to be different than the extracellular fluid, the fluid that's outside the cells, okay? So this extracellular fluid can be also called interstitial? Okay, so it's fluid that's outside your cells but still maintained in your body. So this would be if you were to take out your liver, right? Your liver is going to be very heavy. It's going to be composed of cells, connective tissue, and also it's have a lot of water in it, right? But it's not water, it's going to be that extracellular fluid. Okay, so this is your internal environment, and notice how they're a little different. The intracellular fluid inside your cells will contain more proteins because there's a lot of activity inside your cells. We have enzymes running chemical reactions. Enzymes are all proteins. And it's going to be higher in potassium. And then the outside extracellular fluid will contain more sodium. All right, so we can subdivide our extracellular fluid into two subdivisions: the plasma, which is going to be surrounding our blood cells, and then interstitial fluid surrounding our cells. All right, so just take a look at this picture here. We have different images sort of outlining the kinds of water that's in our body. So look at the color blue, right? The total body water is going to be all the water content of our body. So everything that's in blue, so what's not outlined is basically the spaces of our body, right? The air sacs of our lungs are not going to have fluid, the tubules of our kidneys, and then the GI tract. In the next picture, we have represented the intracellular fluid. So this is fluid inside of our cells. So we only have representative a few cells here, but we can see the blue is inside the cells and whatever's inside of our red blood cells in our circulatory system. Then we have the extracellular fluid, right? So this is fluid that'll be found in our body, but not the fluid inside of our cells. So the cells are left, they're sort of other color, and everything else is blue besides our lumen. Plasma, right? That's the fluid that's going to be surrounding our red blood cells. Interstitial fluid is just not plasma, right? So it's all the fluid inside of our body, around our cells, not in our cells, but surrounding the cells, and it's not plasma. So if you just look at the distribution of our total body water, right, we have about 42 liters of water in our body, which is kind of a lot. Intracellular fluid, so inside of our cells, is the next most massive, or the most content. It's 28 liters. It's a lot. The extracellular fluid makes up about 14 liters, plasma about 3 liters, and the interstitial fluid about 11. So we are a very watery organism, and we rely on water, to run the chemical reactions that we need to maintain appropriate osmotic pressure, and to remain healthy. And we all know that if you don't have enough water, we can get severely dehydrated, and that can lead to death. All right, so let's take a look at this. The answer is B, water. All right, what is the answer to this? All right, that's going to be extracellular fluid, letter B, because it's outside of our cells, so it's not going to be intracellular fluid, and it's going to be also in the blood, so that's going to include plasma. So this one is your answer, extracellular fluid, because it's going to be all the fluid that's outside the cells, which includes the plasma, which is the term for fluid that's located outside cells and found outside of the blood. So we're not including plasma anymore. So what's that term going to be? That's going to be D, interstitial fluid. All right, let's look at this one. All right, which of the following is part of the body's internal environment? It's going to be letter D, right? Anywhere where it says lumen. Lumen is a space that's actually not part of our internal environment. That's an opening. And so that is, you've got to knock out choices A, B, and C, and D is the answer. Next question. All right. So we remember that we have different compositions, so it cannot be letter A. Okay. And then intracellular fluid has more proteins, rich in potassium, while the extracellular fluid has more sodium. So this is correct. All right, so we're going to pause there and start homeostasis in the next portion.